Greetings, ladies and gentlefish, and welcome to a review of this machine, Tier 7 German medium tank, the legendary Panzer V Panther. This is one of the more iconic vehicles from history, and indeed one of the more iconic vehicles from the Second World War, and it's one of those tanks, together with the Tiger, that people tend to play this game for. Especially if you're playing on the EU server. I think Germans are the most popular nation on the European server, I believe. Anyway, so, as has become customary, a little bit of history for you. The Panther project, or the project to design the machine that eventually became the Panther, kind of kicked off in response to the Germans encountering the Soviet T-34. The sloped armour on that thing proving very resilient, the ability to mount a 76mm gun, as it was in the case of the T-34, and this led to a call for bids to design a new German medium tank that was to replace eventually the Panzer IIs, Panzer IIIs, Panzer IVs that the Wehrmacht were using and were due to be using. Essentially, the competition came down to two competing designs, one from the MAN company and one from the Daimler company, and in the end the MAN design won, and that became the Panther that has gone down in history. When the Allies first encountered this machine, I believe it was first encountered in North Africa, but I might be mistaken there, so don't quote me on that. But when they first encountered it, they expected it to be much like the Tiger, a machine that was available in relatively small numbers, given to specialist units, and that essentially the Allies didn't have to worry about, because whilst it was technologically superior, there were only a few of them, so it wasn't a massive deal. However, while the Tiger was designed to be a heavy tank, designed to be a specialist machine, and was frankly horrifically over-engineered and very complex to repair, complex and expensive to build, etc., the Panther was completely different. The Panther wasn't designed to be some specialist machine, it was designed to be the next medium tank for the German army. And as a result, it meant that the Allies started encountering these things in far greater numbers than they had expected. And the armour on the Panther was formidable. Frontally, it's better armoured than the Tiger. The armour may be thinner, but you've got this sloping going on again, harking back to the fact that this was a response to the T-34. The gun, it was the 75mm L70 gun, and just to show you a bit more what that would look like, I'm going to bring up the Panther M10 because that's got more of the historical setup. So you've got this 75mm L70 gun. Was perfectly capable of knocking out Allied tanks and had a usable high explosive round. And so it was a very, very formidable machine. And not only that, but in terms of production costs, it was a bit more expensive than a Panzer IV to build, but not by that much. And it was considerably cheaper than the Tiger was. It was more reliable than the Tiger, and so this was available potentially in far greater numbers, and this would, in my opinion, have posed a far greater threat to the Allies than the Tiger ever did or ever could hope to. And so, for my money, this is a machine that deserves a bit more kudos than the Tiger, but that's just my own biased opinion. Just quickly before I talk about the machine in game, just to mention the comedy gun on this thing, as it's sometimes referred to, the needle gun, the L100 75mm gun. This is not a complete work of fiction. Hitler, being the tactical genius that he was, for those of you for whom English is not their first language, I am using a large amount of sarcasm here, came to the conclusion that what the Panther really needed was a 100 caliber gun, i.e., sorry, not 100 caliber, but a gun that was 100 times as long as the shell was wide. So, if you have a 75mm gun, that means the shell has a diameter of 75mm, that means your barrel length is 7.5 meters, which is really rather big. It's also really rather stupid. There was no call from the German army, from the troops on the ground for this. The L70 gun was more than capable of dealing with the armour that the Panther was going up against at the time, and having this ridiculously long gun does come with a downside. The point of the ridiculously long gun, generally speaking, is to make the gun more accurate, as there's more barrel length for the shell to travel down, and generally speaking, you try and give the shell a higher exit velocity from the barrel. However, this does actually come with a downside. In order for it to have a higher exit velocity, you end up giving it more charge. Now, if you're dealing with an armor-piercing round, fine, whatever, it doesn't really matter. An armor-piercing round is essentially a solid bullet. If you're dealing with a high-explosive round, that high-explosive round will also be sent out at a greater velocity. And so in order for the high explosive round to actually survive long enough to get to the position where it can go boom, it has to be given a thicker shell casing, because it's going faster, it's being propelled faster. And if you've got the same size shell and you've just given it a thicker shell casing, that leaves less space inside for the boom boom stuff. It's very technical, isn't this? And so essentially you get less bang for your buck, you get less explosion for a same caliber high explosive round. And so what Hitler wanted was a gun that would have been better, but in ways that didn't matter, against enemy armor, but worse in ways that did matter against soft targets. And let's be honest, most of the time for any tanker in the Second World War, they were encountering soft targets. Machine gun nests, fixed anti-tank emplacements, troops, whatever. And so a HE round was incredibly important. Anyway, what is it you get in-game? Well, if we just quickly run down the stats on the right-hand side, the first thing that really smacks you in the face is that this thing gets 1,300 hit points. This is a medium tank. It's a big medium tank. I mean, the Germans don't do things by halves, but it's a medium tank. There are heavy tanks with less health than this. 1,300. How does that compare to some heavy tanks? Just for the sake of comparison. It is, let's find some tier 7 heavy tanks. It is, hey look, T29. It is 50 hit points more than the T29. Do we have any others? Oh, yes, I do. I have some Soviets. It is, compared to the KV-3, which gets a lot of health, it is 100 less than the KV-3. It's only 200 less than the IS-3, and that's tier 8 for goodness sake. The Panther gets an awful lot of health. In fact, the only medium tank at its tier that can match it for health, or even close to match it, is the Chi-Ri, the the massive Japanese monstrosity. It's a 45-ton machine, which means that if this thing manages to get up a bit of speed, and it's got a speed limit of 55 kilometers an hour, you end up with 45, 46 tons of German steel slamming into you potentially. So this thing can actually be quite good at ramming as long as you're selective with your targets. 700 horsepower engine is not too shabby, but do bear in mind this is a 45, 46 ton machine. It is not light, and so that only actually corresponds to a 15 horsepower per ton, which is okay but not fantastic. When you start factoring in things like ground resistance and whatnot, for a medium tank the Panther is rather sluggish, as denoted by the traverse speed. Now that does not actually mean that that is the speed at which the tank will traverse, because the actual traverse speed depends on ground resistances and a whole bunch of other stuff, but it indicates that this thing is not exactly going to turn lightning fast. Armour we'll talk about a little bit more later. 40 on the rear of the hull, 50 on the side of the hull, which isn't fantastic, 85 on the front, angled, not too shabby. Turret, 60 at the rear, 60 at the side, 120 at the front, but I will talk about that more later on. Just for now to say that the Panther is not the best armoured machine in the world, and it's not the best armoured tier 7 medium tank, but it has just enough armour to shrug off some shots, and when you combine that with its 1,300 hit points, it can actually, in the right situation, be a fairly resilient machine. We'll talk about the gun in a little bit more later. Turret traverse, again, nothing spectacular. 380 meter view range is respectable for its tier, but nothing to get too excited about. 710 meter signal range is perfectly adequate. I mean, no one really gets excited over a high quality radio. So, I guess we should really talk about the guns, and there's 3 guns on this thing, but if you've got any common sense, you'll only use 2 of them. You have, well, I'm not going to talk about the 105 just now. I'll tell you why you're only going to use 2 of them a little bit later when we talk about the grind. Effectively, your stock gun is the L70. This is the historical gun that the machine used. 15 rounds a minute rate of fire, 150 pen, 135 average damage, 0.35 dispersion at 100 meters for a 2.3 second aim time. It's not a terrible gun. I mean, this is the gun that carries over from the tier 6, the VK3002M. 150 average pen is actually about par for the course for what a lot of tier 7 medium tanks get. A lot of tier 7 medium tanks effectively have the same guns as their tier 6 counterparts, but just with increased rate of fire, more accurate. The actual penetration and alpha damage values tend, in many cases, are the same or very similar. 135 average damage is anemic. It's a pea shooter, deal with it. Your penetration does of course go up to 194 if you're willing to spam APCR, which is an interesting option, if expensive. 0.35 dispersion is alright, nothing to get too excited about. 2.3 second aim time. It's not a terrible stock gun, it's alright. The top gun is the comedy gun, the L100. Yeah, that one. Compare it to the stock gun. What do you get and what do you not get? Because it's not an upgrade in every single sense. Aim time, the same. You're more accurate once you're fully aimed. Your alpha damage is the same. Your penetration goes up to 198 and your rate of fire is 13.64. So, what you effectively do is make the gun more accurate, give it higher penetration, but reduce its DPM when you go from the L70 to the L100. This means that if you wanted to, you could use the L70, fire a shed ton of APCR, and you would get roughly the same penetration as the L100, and you'd get higher DPM. That is an option. I'm not going to suggest that you do that. Why am I not going to suggest that you do that? Because if you're going to do that and try and go for the DPM, you might as well be playing one of the other tier 7 medium tanks, like the Comet for instance, that is actually designed to have good DPM. DPM is not the Panther's selling point. Neither is its alpha damage. So what is the selling point on this thing and with this gun? Well, really, it's the fact that you're pinpoint accurate, provided you let it aim, and 198 penetration is by far and away the highest of any tier 7 medium tank. It's higher than many tier 7 heavy tanks, and essentially it means that unlike a lot of the tier 7 medium tanks which really do benefit from having some APCR rounds or having some premium rounds, you really don't need it with the Panther. It's got enough penetration to deal with it. I mean, you can see I carry a few of them. I don't think I've ever fired one, but it's just in case I have to penetrate the lower plate of an E75 from the front or something like that, because then your penetration bumps up to, is it 240 odd? Yeah, 244. So that's the gun. It's a needle gun, low alpha. The DPM isn't actually fantastic. It's the penetration and the accuracy that you're really getting with that gun. Speaking of which, let's have a quick talk about the research path on this thing and what the grind's like. So, we're looking at the Panther, which I can't even find it now. There we go. There it is. Alright, so how do you get to the Panther? Well, it's a bit of a... It's not the best story in the world, let's be honest. Alright, so you start off down here at tier 2. Well, really you start at tier 1 with the L tractor, but if you're playing any sort of German tank, you're going to have to play that. Just get on with it. Panzer II at tier 2, it's alright. It gets a selection of autocannons to choose from. I'm not a massive fan of autocannons, so this was not a keeper tank for me, but it's not a bad machine at all. Tier 3, you get the Panzer IIIA, which is very fast. The gun is alright. I mean, it does suffer a little bit from tier 3 tank syndrome, i.e. you see tier 5s like KV1s, and that's painful, but you are at least very quick. At tier 4, you get the turd on tracks known as the DW2, or the douchebag wagon 2, as it is not so affectionately referred to by many. This thing is a bad tank, let's not make any bones about it, so just try and get through that as quickly as you possibly can, I imagine. Tier 5. And you'll have noticed so far, actually, you've got a bit of a hodgepodge. You've gone light tank, light tank, light tank, heavy tank, heavy tank at tier 5, VK3001H. This is the sniper of the tier 5 heavy tanks. You get a really good gun on a really bad platform. The tank, the armor sucks, the engine is mounted in a terrible position, the mobility sucks. It's just the gun that's good. I didn't mind it too much. Some people really dislike it. It's going to be a matter of personal preference. And you finally get your first medium tank on this entire line at tier 6 with the VK3002M. I already have a review of this on my YouTube channel, so go and check it out if you're interested in it. In short, I think this thing's a bit of a turkey. It's the tier 6 Panther, if you will. It's the prototype Panther. I don't like it. I don't like it at all. I think it's pretty mediocre at best and pretty horrible at worst. But there we go, them's the breaks. Then you finally get to the Panther at tier 7. Having done so, what modules do you or don't you have already? Well, the top engine you can have from the tier 6, the 3002M. The radios, if anybody really cares, you can have unlocked on the VK3001H. So top engine, top radio, Bonza. You will not have the top gun, but you will have the L70 gun and the 105 L28. This is the 105mm howitzer you can use on a whole bunch of different tanks. I'm not going to advise you to use it because whilst that thing is really good, it's incredibly good on a tier 4 tank destroyer, it's really good on a tier 5 medium tank, it's alright on a tier 6 machine, on a tier 7 machine that can meet tier 9s, not so much. So I don't recommend that. I would recommend you use the L70 75mm gun. And of course you get the stock turret. So, prioritise the L100 gun if you can. I can't remember if you can mount it on the stock suspension or not. If you can't, get the suspension or mount the enhanced track module, whatever it's called. If you can, get the L100, then the suspension if you need it, and then the Schmalterm turret. The Schmalterm does add a lot of armour. It also gives you a little bit of extra view range, which is nice. And then you wind up with a fully upgraded Panther. Hurrah! What about crew skills and equipment? Well, let's start off with consumables. I've just got your standard set of consumables. Does this thing catch on fire? Yes, you want a fire extinguisher. Are you going to get tracked or suffer module damage? Yes, you want a repair kit. Do you lose crew members? Yes, you want a first aid kit. I don't really think either of those are negotiable. Whether you choose the regular versions or the large versions is entirely up to you, but I would take those standard 3 pieces of equipment. Speaking of equipment, what about actual equipment? Well, there's a few different options that you have available to you. Unfortunately, because this tank at tier 7 is not American and is not British, a vertical stabilizer is not one of them. If this tank could mount a vertical stabilizer, I would be all over it, but it can't. So what can you mount? Well, a variety of different things. I recommend gun rammer. Your DPM isn't great to start with. Try and make it a bit better. Some sort of view range enhancing thing, whether it's coated optics or binos, I leave that up to you. I've been using binos on this thing. If you have a better crew, you might want to switch to coated optics, leave that to you. But some sort of view range enhancing thing, and then take your pick. I would say either improved vents, and that's what I've gone for, just for the all-round improvement. Or, if you find that the aim time is a little bit frustrating, you could look at getting an enhanced gun laying drive. But I think my recommendation is probably going to be rammer, vents, and either optics or binos, take your pick. Some sort of view range enhancing thing. Don't forget, of course, that if you do choose vents, that will also enhance your view range. I mean, you're a medium tank, you want to have view range. That's generally a good idea. What about crew skills? Well, there's not going to be anything particularly spellbinding here. Commander wants 6th sense, yeah. Your loader wants safe stowage. Get it. Don't argue, get safe stowage. Your ammo rack on this thing is horrible. I'll talk about it more later, but basically it's mounted in the side of the tank just here toward the front, and it means that if you're angling at all, you can start suffering ammo rack damage. Like, it's the same problem that the 3002M has a tier below. And any machine with a Panther chassis, ammo rack problems, it's quite painful. So get safe stowage. Preventative maintenance is also not a bad idea. Your engine and fuel tank are both sitting here at the rear. Shots to that big fat German backside are going to set you on fire, and it's going to be annoying. Apart from that, repairs is not a terrible idea. So I guess also that means that if you go, as I did, with 6th sense, repairs, preventative maintenance, repairs, safe stowage, your repair skill isn't going to be great, so you might want to actually fill one of these slots up with a toolbox until these reach 100% and you can take more repairs, or maybe you want to take repairs instead of these 2 perks and then swap them over, retrain for gold or something once you hit 100%. The specifics are up to you, obviously, but I do recommend safe stowage on your loader. I kind of recommend preventative maintenance on your driver. It's less important. 6th sense on your commander is a must. Apart from that, repairs is a good option. And from then you can start choosing skills of choice. I mean, take repairs if you haven't taken it already, brothers in arms, whatever is your preference. Is there anything else to talk about right at the moment? Nah, I think I've waffled on long enough. So, let's go and have a quick look at the module locations on this thing to give you an idea of where you don't want to get shot and where you can shoot other Panthers, and the armor scheme, and have a look at some games. Okay, so just going to quickly look at a couple of the different module locations on this tank. The website I'm using is fractionally out of date, so I will mention where that is relevant. In terms of the crew, there's nothing really surprising. The driver sits on the hull to the right hand side as you look at it from the front. The gunner sits in the turret, again right hand side if you look at it from the front. The loader sits in the turret, left hand side as you look at it from the front. And same side as the gunner, you also have the commander towards the rear of the tank. As for module locations, the engine is basically at the back. There's also a fuel tank at the back, so this thing will light up like a Christmas tree if you can shoot it in the rear. Now, this will tell you that there's engine segments toward the front as well. Don't believe that. That's from way back when the transmission at the front basically counted, if you shot it, it counted as shots to the engine. It could set you on fire in the same way. This was abandoned, no longer the case, so you don't have to worry about that. The bit that is really of interest, in my opinion, is the ammo rack location, because the ammo rack on this thing is terrible. The ammo rack is in the middle of the tank here, and skewed over to the left hand side, well, right hand side if you're looking at the tank front on. This means that if you're side scraping around a corner, for example, or if you're angling, it is preferable to angle such that you show them the armor on your right hand side rather than the armor on your left hand side, because that's where your ammo rack is, and that will make you very sad if you get hit there. An ammo rack, the Panther does have ammo rack related problems, so don't make yourself sad, angle the tank the other way. And shots to the front can go through the ammo rack if they go through in sort of that corner piece, so do be careful about that. Having said that, let's go and have a quick look at the armor scheme. Alright, let's talk about the armor scheme then. So here is our Panther, and here are the armor zones. As to be expected, the engine deck is a big fat pile of RTHE shell auto pen. Rear armor 40, rear armor on turret 60, don't expect anything from it at all. Side armor 50, side armor of turret 60, don't expect a great deal of much. However, if you side scrape at about this angle, you can find that your side armor starts becoming an auto bounce. But without that auto bounce angle, you're looking at 70mm of effective armor. So if you're going to side scrape in this tank, you want to make it an auto bounce angle and have your gun pointing somewhere over there, that sort of angle. So that's really all there is to say about the side armor. From the front of the turret is 120 with a little bit of angling to make it 123. Against lower tiers, this thing will get you bounces, but not against higher tiers. I mean, 120 armor is nothing to really shout out about. Interestingly, the commander's hatch, most of it is also 120. There's a tiny little smidgen at the top that's like 50 effective, but it's basically 120mm thick. It's the same thickness as the front of your turret, so it's not really a weak spot per se. Gun mantlet, well, you can start getting some silly numbers. 385, 277, auto bounce. I mean, the gun mantlet is pure RNG about whether you pen or not. Don't shoot it in the gun mantlet. If you've got at least 130 odd, 140 pen, and most tier 6 mediums have 150, and you can only see the front of the turret, you can shoot it just here in the flat bits and you'll go through. There are little ears here for you to also shoot at. Don't shoot them. Look at the equivalent thickness, shed loads, because there's side armor behind that. If you are shooting the front of the turret on a Panther, bear in mind these side sections might be side armor, but they're an auto bounce angle for any gun that is smaller than 180mm caliber. Yeah, good luck with that. So the 183 that this will never meet can pen this. Front of the hull, lower plate. Well, from the front, the lower plate is actually an auto bounce angle unless you get quite a good angle on it. Upper plate 85mm plus the sloping about 100, Bit of angling, you can make it 130 odd. It's enough to bounce lower tier tanks, it's not enough to bounce anything bigger. Is basically what we're getting at. The armour on the Panther is okay, but especially when you consider it's quite a large machine, it's not fantastic. Don't confuse yourself with a heavy tank, you're not. I think that's all the armour scheme I wanted to talk about, so let's go and have a quick look at some replays. Here is game number 1, and this is a tier 7 game, top tier, as promised, and we're here on Corellia. It's a standard game. So, when top tier, you have enough armour to bounce some shots, and you actually have quite a healthy chunk of, well, health. In fact, actually, looking at the other tanks on my team, the only machines with more HP than I have are our Tiger 1 and the Tog 2. I have more health than an AMX M445, IS, IS2 or T29. Or any of the others. Looking at the enemy team, the Black Prince is their only tank that has more health than I do. So the Panther can tank a fair number of shots if it has to. Ideally you don't want to, but if it has to, it can. So, going into the valley here, and there's a little spot that's nice to use on a standard game on Corellia. So you can see we're just coming up to this rock formation, and there's these bushes over to the right hand side just here, and they will hide you gloriously. Now really this position, it favours tanks with higher alpha and lower rate of fire, because every time you fire from it you are likely to be spotted. I don't think I have Sixth Sense on the crew at this point, but nonetheless, there we go, I bounce a shot there. I still make use of it. So really, if you've got like 7-second plus reload, it's nice because you can just fire, pull back, and everything's hunky-dory. Put a shot into that KV-1. Instead, I'm firing, pulling back, coming forward, and every time I shoot someone I'm only hitting them for 130. And I can't really continually fire on them, which is kind of irritating. We just lost 2 tanks, which is also kind of irritating, but them's the breaks. IS, put a shot into him. So, just harassing these guys, hopefully not giving them easy shots on me. That shot missed. And with our angled front and relatively good turret, you can see we're bouncing our fair number of shots. Usually I imagine from lower tiers, but we'll take it. Put a shot into that T150, sorry, that T29. He's got the stock turret because he's only got 1150 health. So he's most likely, though not necessarily, using the 90mm gun. KB85 is gone. And we pick up a kill. Scoreline is now even at thrill keys? 3 kills apiece once I've stopped being dyslexic. VK and KV over there, don't have shots on them, although if this KV pokes himself out, maybe I will. But that would be really dumb. Surely he won't do that. Oh well. And he's dead. 5-3. So we know there's the IS down there, T1 heavy, T29, a couple of KVs, or VKs or whatever. I get them muddled. There's the T29, and we bounce because yay. Oh, well, never mind. Pick out his frontal hull and put another shot into him. Low damage roll, but them's the breaks. We'll take it. And I'm picking on the T29 because he's valuable and because it means I don't have to expose myself to anyone else. Somehow I bounce on a T1 heavy. With 198mm penetration, I really wasn't expecting that. That one just seems to take his track off, and it's like, what? What gun? Why you fail me? Ugh. T1 heavy's dead anyway. I take a shot there from somebody, and I decide to back off. Discretion is the better part of valor. I'm trying to force the rate of fire to do its thing here, and this is not a position that really favours that. Still a good position, but as I say, it's a position that works better with lower rate of fire, higher alpha guns. Alright, so, T29 is the only one left in the valley that we know of. There's a Stug 3G somewhere, and Panther and Black Prince are over on the other flank. This has been a fairly convincing win, really. That's how it appears so far. Trying to pick out the commander's hatch on the T29 because I didn't think I had good shots on his hull. Yeah. Ignore that replay glitch. And we've done our snipey thing, so we're just going to move forwards. So, we've seen hopefully that the gun's fairly accurate, penetration's reasonable. How I bounced on that T1 Heavy I don't really know, but there we go. The armour is good enough. I bounced a few shots during the course of this game. Now, the rate of fire on the gun isn't bad. The rate of fire on its own is good, but considering that you only hit for 130, it's not actually fantastic. Polish off that T29 despite flubbing a shot, and there's just the Stug 3 and the Black Prince now. Depending on their health values, I expect the Black Prince to die to our trio of top tier heavy tanks around A4, B4, C3. And hopefully we'll be able to do something about the Stug, and that will be the game. Stug actually nails our VK3001H, so he is definitely in this vicinity somewhere. And so we're going to try and find him and kill him. Murderize him in the face. So myself and the Stug 4 are just going straight up here. The KV and the S35 being a little bit more cautious. Fine. At this stage, Stug 3 really doesn't bother me. I have the armour to bounce him. I don't know about reliably, but to certainly bounce him. And I have the health pool to just tank his shots if necessary, so I really don't care. He does not have the armour to bounce me. He does not have the health pool to soak my shots. Somehow that shot doesn't pen, not sure how. Bounce him there. Second shot goes in, he puts a shot into me, and third one should be the charm. There we go. Kill number 3, and our S35 actually picks up the kill on the Black Prince. Tier 5 killing a Tier 7, so well done to him. And that was the game. Take a look at the post-battle results, and then we'll jump into game number 2. Here is our second game. We are, as ever, bottom tier now. This is a Tier 9 game here on Malinovka. Yep, and it's a standard game. So, generally speaking, Tier 7 medium tanks don't like being bottom tier, because if you look at the sort of guns that they get, generally speaking, the guns available on Tier 7 mediums are often the same guns that you got on the Tier 6 mediums, but with improved soft stats, with better rate of fire, higher DPM, etc. But their damage values and their penetration values are not actually any higher. So you tend to find that your Tier 6 medium comes with about 150 penetration, and a lot of Tier 7 mediums come with about 150 penetration, which means when they're not top tier, or especially when they're bottom tier, you can really notice that penetration difference, and a lot of people struggle with them in that situation. The Panther comes with 198mm of penetration with its regular armor piercing ammo. If you're willing to fire the APCR, of course, that jumps up to 244, as I already mentioned. So, it can cope when bottom tier. Now, there's an AMX 1375. I'm just going to plough a couple of shots over in his general direction. Maybe the first one tracked him, you know, or maybe he's stupid and won't move. Who knows? It's not as if this tank comes with any shortage of ammo. Indeed, it looks like either the first one tracked him or he was stupid and didn't move. Set him on fire, kill him. There we go. Straight away, we've taken out one of their light tanks. And on Malinovka, you know, light tanks are valuable anyway, but Malinovka, as it's a big, wide open map, especially so. Don't really have a good shot on that Super Pershing, and firing, of course, runs the risk of giving your position away. So really, in this sort of situation, you don't want to fire unless you have a fairly reliable, penetrating, damaging shot. And even then, a lot of the time, you don't actually want to pull the trigger. From this position, I have binos, remember, from this position, I can potentially spot a number of the enemy team. So, the IS-8 appears to be moving across here. Binos up. Can we see him? No, we can't. That's unfortunate. There he is. And we can put shots into his side. Hopefully without giving our position away. Ah, that shot was a bit too much lead and bounced. That shot also bounced. That was a bit unlucky. We only put one penetrating shot in there, which is a little bit unfortunate, actually. I was a bit disappointed with that, but whatever. Look at the minimap, and you may or may not notice. I would make the minimap larger if I could, but I can't. Because, yeah, reasons. I think it's my screen resolution. Look at the minimap, and you may we'll be able to see that we have 2 tanks heading up to the hill. They are still heading up there, they have not made it there. And that the whole hill area in general is looking a little bit dubious. This could become a problem. There we go. AMX-12T has been spotted up on the hill. Now, he's no match in that situation for an IS-3. That's fine. It's what else might be up there, like an M103. Oh dear. If there was an ST-1 up there as well, that would make it even worse. So far, M103. So, that's a cause for concern, but we can't immediately do anything about that right now. T69. Miss. Damn it. Gun is very accurate, but it was a very slim shot at a respectable distance, so we can't be too angry about it. AMX M445. Hello, my friend. One more shot will finish him off. Oop. Waffle takes him out. Super Pershing pops up again. No, that was never going to hit, Chip. Come on. But I don't really have penetrating shots on him. IS-3 appears to be going down the other flank of the map, but our GW Tiger shuts him the hell down. And we're winning this 4-0, which is nice. Now, our heavy tanks who were heading up to the hill have decided they are no longer heading up to the hill and they're actually running away. There are 3 targets spotted up there. One is the AMX, one is the M103, and one is the ST-1. The ST-1 is the tank I really didn't want to see up there because, well, ST-1's kind of a bit like a Tier 9 T-29. It has very good all-round armour. It has a ridiculously hard turret front. And it actually has respectable gun depression, especially considering it's a Soviet tank. I think it might be 8 degrees. So that's really not a machine you want to see. And there's a T-54E1 over there as well. Oh, this just got messy. This just got very messy indeed. So we've got 2 Tier 9 heavy tanks and an autoloader. Again, Tier 9. Oh dear. Oh dear, oh dear. We had an E75 and an IS-3, but they were running away, and they just got shivved. M12 took out, so that's artillery, took out our IS-3, and the M103 nailed our E75. Suddenly the scoreline is 4-2, and those guys are pushing through. That Lorraine is not long for this world. And in one quick fell swoop, the enemy team is going to have nailed 3 of our tanks, 2 of which were top tier, which is messy. What can I do about this situation? Well, yeah, I can try and shoot these guys, but I can also try and spot them so that our tank destroyers or our artillery can do something about them. 12T here, dies. Cool. I'm keeping these guys lit up. ST1. Trying to track him into the process. Finally gets spotted, and he is now dead. M103, oh, T-54 shooting me. Let's try and get into cover. Take a second shot, but managed to make it behind the rock. M103 is now dead. T-54E1 is now taking a whole world of hurt. And it's all made possible because I was able to come up here and spot, or a chunk of that was made possible because I came over here to spot these guys, and I'm rewarded with that with assistance damage. So I may only be a Tier 7, but with the support of some bigger, scarier guys behind me, we managed to pull that off. Now, you didn't need to be in a Panther to do that. You could have done that in any Tier 7 medium tank. The slightly advantageous thing the Panther had there was that it could afford to take a couple of hits because you've got that big, fat health pool. Now, here is another problem. T-69, not as dangerous as the T-54E1, its bigger brother, but still a threat. And he's dead. 4 enemy tanks remain. T-34 and the IS-3 were both last spotted camping base, and 2 artillery. That M12 has picked up 2 kills. GW Tiger was last spotted in A2. So now we're going to go on the offensive. Still got over 800 health to play with. And I haven't been doing nothing. I've been spotting for my team. I've been putting in damage. Been doing what I can, even though I'm bottom tier. So, there's the IS-3. AMX 1375 is moving up the Lake Road. There's the T-34. And so let's see if we can put some shots into these guys. Trying to concentrate on the IS-3 because he's lower health. That shot misses. It wasn't fully aimed when I took it, it's just he was moving, so I wanted to... Don't know how that one bounced, so I wanted to make sure the shot went out. That one bounced on his turret. I don't really actually have a good shot on the T-34, which is a bit of a shame. So, relocate. Don't have a good shot, I'm going to move to a position from which I do. And no amount of spamming APCR would compensate for that. In fact, I'm not sure I've ever actually fired APCR with this gun. I've got it just in case I need to penetrate the lower plate of an E75 frontally or something like that, but I don't remember ever using it. So, T-34. Does my team need some assistance? Oh, I don't have a good shot on him. It's the side of his turret. But I still get a penetrating hit. Artillery has been spotted. So rather than having dubious shots on a now hidden T-34, I decided to see if I can go and do something about the artillery. Now, of course, there are other people doing it as well, and the artillery goes down, taken down by our Panther 2. And then that just leaves me to go and find this close in with this T-34 hopefully and do some damage to him. This is just a matter of picking up more credits, damage, XP at the end of the game now. The game is over. We've won. Oh no, there was the other artillery, wasn't there? I completely forgot. Centurion puts in one shot, allowing me to ninja the kill. 2 kills! Yay! T-34 is still alive, but he's not going to be for that much longer. I'm not actually sure if I managed to make it over to him in time. Oh yes, 3rd kill successfully secured. And that was the game. So there we go. Big wide open map. Not top tier, bottom tier, but we were still able to do our thing, and that was without just loading APCR or anything like that. So, take a look at the post-battle results, and then we'll jump back into the garage and just round things off. So, what do I think of this thing overall? I like it. It's not for everyone. The large size, kinda dubious armor, dodgy ammo rack, not spectacular gun depression, puny alpha damage, lowish DPM, lack of vertical stabilizer. I mean, there's a long list of things that might mean you don't like this tank. But I do. Which is interesting, because I don't like the Tier 6, the VK3002M. I think it's a complete turkey. I don't think it's very good. And I can't put my finger on why I don't like the Tier 6 but do like the Tier 7, because if you look at them on paper, they should basically be the same tank, just a tier skewed. I mean, the relative to its tier, the Panther gets an armor upgrade. Sorry, not relative to its tier. The Panther gets an armor upgrade over the Tier 6, but then it's a tier higher. I think in practice the turret armor on the Panther is more meaningful. The Panther does get slightly better gun depression, which is nice. And I guess part of it comes down to the fact that while the Panther does have ammo rack problems, I have never detonated because of ammo rack damage. And in the 3002M I have. And maybe that's part of it. So I can't really put my finger on why, but I really like the Panther where I really didn't like the 3002M at Tier 6. Do I recommend this? It's difficult. Because of the low alpha damage, and the not spectacular DPM if we're going to be honest, it's quite hard work to get good games out of the Panther. But if you can, I think it's very rewarding. So, my in-game stats for this vehicle, I've played 121 games, I've got a 55% win rate, 652 average XP per battle, and bear in mind that's not with a premium account. I've got, I believe, a single mark of excellence, I'm approaching 80%, so my second isn't too far off. This is damage ratio 1.24, destruction ratio 2.21, I mean I can quote statistics all day long. This machine is, at the time of me recording this, it's the only tank I own with a statistically significant, I guess, number of battles, 121, more than 100, that I currently have Winnicum? Unicum level of WN8 in. My WN8 in this thing is over 2,300. I can't remember exactly what it is. So, I really like it. I'm keeping it, but as I say, it won't be for everyone. Also, I mean, I'm a big fan of the Panther for historical reasons anyway, but even if I weren't, I really do like this machine, and I'm keeping it. Will you guys like it? I can't promise. Like I said, it's really going to depend on your own preference, your own opinions. Some people really don't like this tank, and I understand why. I'm just not one of them. I really get on with this. In my 121 games so far, I've racked up 3 ace tankers, which is nice. You know, I just have fun in this. I've had some great games in it. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed that review, possibly found it vaguely informative, would be nice. If you did, please feel free to catch some of my other videos and or subscribe to my channel. And I wish you very happy hunting on that battlefield. Ciao ciao.